Hello dear students, welcome back to online English classes. If you perceive something new or if you learn something new, it is such a joy, isn't it? School is probably the place where you learn new things, isn't it? But why schooling is such a pain? If you ask any school-going child about his school, you will not find him giving you such good reactions about it. Because most of the children don't like to go to school. They absolutely hate it over there. They absolutely hate going to school. There are a number of reasons about why do kids hate school. And you will often find children around you giving excuses for not going to school. School is probably the most important place of childhood, but unfortunately it has become the worst place and worst experience for many children. Just for instance, if you go and stand near any pre-KG or LKG or UKG classrooms or any kindergarten section of any schools, you would often hear sobbing and crying sounds from the classroom. That is very painful to hear. And children feel like running out of the classroom. And I'm sure most of you have experienced the same when you were young. And if time travel would be real, you would go back in time and stop yourself from going to school, don't you? So, what is the point of having such schools that a child doesn't want to go? There is a great need of creating schools where a child wants to go. Of all the different manifestations of human beings, the categories are getting more and more. A child is the simplest and easiest to make them happy and joyful. So, with such segment of population which is naturally joyful, we still don't understand why it is so difficult to create a joyful way of delivering education. There is a substantial scientific and medical evidence today that if you remain in a pleasant state of experience, your body and mind work at its best. There are other studies trying to establish that if you remain just one day or 24-hour segment in your entire life without a moment of unpleasantness within you, without a moment of agitation, anxiety, without a moment of anxiety or irritation and anger, nothing, just joyful. They say your ability to use your intelligence can go up to 100% in a single day. But unfortunately, the formal education system has failed in incorporating this idea. The formal education system has failed in creating a joyful learning experience for the kids. Well, today I'm here to discuss about the poem that focuses on the downsides of formal education or formal schooling. So, Unit 2 of First PUC English course book is the poem by William Blake. And the title of the poem is The Schoolboy. The poem deals with the theme of child's freedom in childhood. And it also talks about what happens to a child if he is denied of the freedom. And the poem also gives pictures of different sides of formal education as far as a child is concerned. So before we begin to talk about the poem, probably discussing about the background of the poem, let me give you some information about the poet. William Blake is an 18th century poet and a painter. He is a renowned poet who lived between 1757 to 1827. He was born in Soho and he had little formal education, but he was apprenticed to James Bassar, an eminent engraver or an eminent artist, and then he was sent to Royal Academy for higher education. His finest works as an artist include Inventions to the Book of Job. His collection of poetry include poetical sketches which he wrote in the year 1783. Song of Innocence which he wrote in the year 1789. Marriages of Heaven and Hell which he wrote in the year 1787. And Song of Experience, which he wrote in the year 1794. The poem The Schoolboy is a lyric from the collection of his poems, The Songs of Experience. Song of Innocence and Song of Experience is a collection of illustrated poems by William Blake. Song of Innocence is originally complete work first published in the year 1789. It's a conceptual collection of 19 poems specially engraved, specially designed with artwork. And this collection of poems shows happy, innocent perception in a pastoral harmony. But at times, such as in the poems, the chimney sweeper and the little black boy subtly shows the dangers of the vulnerable state. Songs of Experience is a collection of 26 poems forming the second part of William Blake's Song of Innocence and Song of Experience, and the poems were published in the year 1794. I was saying that the poem Schoolboy is a lyrical poem. What is the meaning of lyrical poem or a lyric poetry? A lyric poetry is a formal type of poetry which expresses personal emotions and feelings and typically spoken in the first person. It is not equivalent to the song lyric, though they are often in the lyric mode. So it's a short poem. It expresses personal emotions and feelings and typically spoken in the first person and are often musical. Now let me introduce you to the background of the poem. There are two schools of thought in this poem as far as schooling is concerned. The first one is formal education and the second one is informal education. A formal education is what students learn in a traditional classroom inside the four walls. This type of education usually begins at the age of 4 and can stretch all the way through college. Well, this formal education system propagates that a child should be sent to school at a very young age. He should learn all the subjects through an academic curriculum and he should be taught tough discipline and help him to imbibe knowledge. Right from the age of 4, when a child starts to speak, the weight of formal education comes on his fragile shoulders and he has to carry this until he reaches the practical career, until he realizes himself that he has lost a child within himself. Well, this system of formal education has failed in realizing the objectives of the creation of mankind and it destroys natural talents. Even in India, we follow this formal education system since the time immemorial. Earlier, we were having Gurukula system and then there were home schools and later this formal schooling came into existence. So, people believe that a child should be sent to school at a very young age and he should learn all the subjects through an academic curriculum and that's how a child can imbibe knowledge. But there is a second school of thought and that is informal school of education. Well, this school of thought propagates the idea that a child should be free to enjoy his childhood. He should be free to enjoy life which is very close to nature. And this school of thought also advocates that if a child is denied of the freedom to enjoy life which is very close to nature, he will not be able to face realities of life when he grows older. And the poet William Blake seems to be propagating this school of thought, that means the second school of thought, informal education, and seems to uphold the second school of thought. Because school atmosphere is quite scary and quite frightening for a child. And hence a child will not be able to grow with his natural talents. So here the poet William Blake seems to say that a child should be free to enjoy his childhood. He should be free to enjoy life which is very close to nature. Now let us get into the poem. The poem has 6 stanzas. As I already told you, the poem The Schoolboy is a lyric. So hence you have all the details in a very simple manner. Let us read and understand the poem. I love to rise in a summer morn when the birds sing on every tree. The distant huntsman winds his horn and the skylark sings with me. Oh, what a sweet company! The first stanza of the poem starts with the boy's feeling, what he wants to do early in the morning. The speaker of the poem is a young boy who is joyful and he wants to rise, he wants to awake in the fresh and delightful summer morning. Further describing the beauty of the summer morning, the boy likes the chirping of the birds on every tree on a summer morning, the sound of the horn that is blown by the distant huntsman, and the sweet and beautiful song of the skylark. Here the boy says, I love to rise in a summer morn. As I already told you, here I refers to the speaker of the poem, that is the schoolboy. He says, I love to rise in a summer morn. Here morn is the short form of morning. When the birds sing on every tree. So when do the birds sing? When it is already daybreak, when it is already daytime. When the school going children get up early in the morning and get ready for school, they catch their bus early in the morning and reach the school by 7:30 or 8 in the morning, and almost in a sleep they attend first few hours of their class and then they come back home in the evening. This is the manner in which children live their life in cities. But this particular boy wants to rise in a summer morn when the birds sing on every tree. That means he wants to rise in a daytime. That means when it is already daytime. Then he says, the distant huntsman winds his horn. And all the men of the village, they are the hunters, or probably some of them have taken hunting as their profession. They are the professional hunters. And they usually start their day by signaling others to get together to start their work. So how do they signal each other? By blowing the horn. It will create a kind of sound. So by hearing that sound, all the hunters will get together and start their journey towards a jungle or a forest or a hill nearby. So here, that's what exactly he says, when the hunter winds his horn. And here the boy says, he wants to hear the sound of the horn blown by the distant huntsman, blown by the hunter from a distant place. And by hearing that, he wants to rise. And then he says, and skylark sings with me. So here the boy talks about the third type of music which makes him joyful. So that is the song of the skylark. And he says, and the skylark sings with me. Here skylark is a small brown bird that sings while flying high above the air. And it is particularly noted for its rich sustained song and also for singing in the air. Even bird scientists say that it is the way in which the birds or the skylarks move their wings. It will produce a kind of sound from its wing as they move their wing. It almost sounds like a music or a song. But however, skylark is the only bird that seems to be singing while at flight. And here the boy says, above my house, when the skylark flies, it will sing a song and I would be attracted towards that and I want to be part of that song. And he wants to rise when it is already daytime, when there is music all around. And then he exclaims, oh, what a sweet company, what a fantastic company, what a good company it is. The company of the bird's song on every tree in the morning, the company of the sound of the horn blown by the distant huntsman, and the company of the beautiful and sweet song of the skylark. So one thing we should understand here, children are innate scientists. They love to experience the sights, scents, and sounds and textures of the outdoor. Nature provides them ample opportunity to discover, to create, to invent. Interacting with natural environment allows children to learn many things. So the first stanza of the poem is all about the things that makes the boy joyful, and happy. He loves to rise in a summer morn when the birds sing on every tree, when the hunter blows his horn from a distant place, and he loves the song of the skylark, the beautiful and sweet song of skylark, and he says all these things are a sweet company to him. Let us move on to the next stanza, that is stanza number 2. But in the second stanza, the tone of the speaker, that is the tone of the boy, totally changes from joyful, delight, rejoicing and hope to dismay and joylessness. It is because the thought of going to school takes all his joy away. Let us find out what he says in the second stanza. But to go to school on a summer morn, oh, it drives all joy away. Under a cruel eye outworn, the little ones spend the day in sighing and dismay. Here the schoolboy says that the thought of going to school in a summer morn, it drives all his joy away. So what is the meaning of the phrase drive away? Drive away means literally chase away, taken away by force, send away, taken away all the joy that he was experiencing in the first stanza, the joy of spending time with music all around in the nature. So he says, but to go to school on a summer morn, it drives all his joy away. The joy of spending time with the sweet company of birds song on every tree in the morning, the sound of the horn blown by the distant huntsman, and the sweet and beautiful song of the skylark. But why? Why the thought of going to school is such painful? There are several reasons. From here onwards, the boy goes on giving reasons why the thought of going to school is such painful. And here he gives the first reason. He says, under a cruel eye outworn, the little ones spend the day in sighing and dismay. He says, under a cruel eye outworn. Here the boy says, he has to sit the whole day means from morning to evening, several hours under the cruel eye. That means under the strict surveillance, he has to sit the whole day under the strict surveillance, under the strict vigilance, under the look of the cruel eye. That means the cruel look of the teacher. Here the phrase outworn means authoritative ways of teaching that is very scary for the children. The teacher will be watching. The boy does not play any mischief. The boy does not get distracted. The boy does not lose concentration in any subjects in books, and hence the teacher will look at the boy with cruel eyes. And the boy feels suffocation and he's scared sitting under the cruel eye of the teacher. And the boy feels suffocation and scared under the cruel eye outworn, under the cruel ways of authoritative teaching. And then he says, under the cruel eye outworn, the little ones spend the day in sighing and dismay. Here, the little ones refer to the children who sit in the classroom. So how do children spend the day? How do the little ones spend the day? They spend the day in sighing and dismay. They have to sit the whole day from morning to evening, and they spend the whole day in sighing. Sighing means crying in regret, a kind of sobbing. As I already told you, if you go and stand near any LKG or UKG sections, you will often hear the sobbing, the crying sound from the classroom because the children don't want to sit inside the classroom. They feel like running out of the place. And here the boy says, the little ones spend the day, the children spend the day in sighing. Sighing means crying in regret. And dismay means feeling of fear and discouragement. Sitting inside the classroom, the children always want to look outside of the window. They always prefer to sit next to the windows because they don't want to get involved in the teaching of the teacher, and they want to look outside of the window. They want to enjoy the activities which is happening in the nature. So they can't face the strict authoritarian ways of teaching. So here the word dismay refers to feeling of fear and discouragement. Let us move on to the next stanza. And here the boy goes on giving reasons which drive all his joy away. He says, "How then at times I drooping sit and spend many an anxious hour, Nor in my book can I take delight, nor sit in learning's bower, o'er through with a dreary shower." He says, "How then at times I drooping sit." Here the boy says, "Ha." It's an expression used to express regret, delight, and relief. But here in the poem, here in this line, the boy uses this expression "ha" to express his regret sitting inside the classroom. Express his regret because of the thought of going to school. Because he doesn't want to sit inside the classroom. He says, "Ha, what a regretful place it is. What a sad place it is. What a miserable place and state it is." He says, "Ha, then at times I drooping sit." How does he sit? He drooping sit. Here droop means hiding or bending. Generally drooping means bending with both shoulders like this. You know, people when they get older, their shoulders bend and they get drooping shoulders. But here, why does the boy sit with a drooping shoulder? It is not because the boy has grown old, but it is because he wants to avoid the cruel look of the teacher, the cruel authoritarian look of the teacher. So he is probably hiding behind a student or a boy who is sitting in front of him. Well, you people also have done the same thing. If you don't want to face the look of the teacher, you try to squeeze yourself, you try to hide yourself, and for that you take the help of the student who is sitting in front of you, and you try to make yourself invisible to the eye of the teacher. And that's what exactly he's saying. How then at times I drooping sit. Here drooping means bending the shoulders. But here in this poem, the boy says he is hiding in front of the boy to avoid the cruel look of the teacher. That's why he is drooping and sit. And then he says, and spend many an anxious hour. Here the boy says he spent many an anxious hour with those drooping shoulders. Here he says many an anxious hour. Here anxious hour means many fearful hours in anxiety, in fear, and in worry. He says many an anxious hour. That means he has to sit in the school many hours because the school has several hours, 7 to 8 hours of teaching. And the boy says he has to sit all those 7 to 8 hours in school in the feeling of regret. And he says he has to sit all those hours in anxiety, restless hours in fear. And then he says, nor in my book can I take delight. And here the boy says he cannot find interest or happiness or delight in his books, in his studies. Here delight means happiness. He says he cannot take delight or happiness in his books or in his studies, in his subjects, because they do not seem to be interesting. He says they seem to be very boring because there is no involvement from the boy's side, because he don't want to sit inside the classroom. He wants to rise in a summer morning and wants to enjoy all the activities that is happening in the nature. And that's why he says that he cannot take any interest in his books. And he says they are the subjects which he do not understand. They are the topics, they are the subjects, they are the books which goes above his head. And they are the informations which do not enter into his small little brain. And then he says, nor sit in learning's bower, worn through with the dreary shower. Here the schoolboy, the speaker of the poem, says he does not feel any joy sitting in learning's bower, which according to the boy is worn through with the dreary shower. The word bower means a shady place under a tree. But here in this poem, the phrase learning's bower is the metaphor for school where children come to learn. It can be a school or a college or university where people gather to acquire knowledge. Thus, the phrase learning's bower or school, according to the schoolboy, according to the speaker of the poem, is totally damaged. And it has a serious defect in it because it is hit by the dreary shower. Here the dreary shower in a simple context means heavy rain which is disastrous. But in the poem it emphasizes the tiresome activities of the school. When we try to relate the phrase dreary shower with the phrase learning's bower, it gives the meaning that the formal education system is totally damaged. It has a serious defect in it. Now the question is why it is defective. It can be traced in the previous stanza. Young children cannot learn under restrictions, under strict supervision. They need love, joy and freedom. But the cruel look of the teacher or the tiresome activities of the school or the attitude of parents in raising their children, in giving education in such a way that all the parents want their children to come first in all the activities. Whether it is studies, whether it is sports, whether it is extracurricular activities, they want their children to come first. They don't worry about the performance. Well, this attitude has totally destroyed the basic purpose of education. Remember, children are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. Parents may house their bodies but not their souls. In the formal education system, the kids are forced to learn many things, of course, which make them capable of acquiring materialistic things in their life. But for that, they have to forcibly sacrifice all the joys of childhood. Okay, let's have a glimpse of what we have learnt in this session. In this poem, the poet William Blake brings out the feeling of a little schoolboy through this poem. He seems to be propagating the second school of thought which we have learnt in the background of the poem. The schoolboy probably has his house in a village where he has an opportunity to have an interaction with the flora and fauna of the area. The schoolboy wants to rise up in a bright summer morning only when the birds sing on every tree, which means a little late in the morning. He also loves the chirping of the birds. He wants to get up only when the huntsman blows the horn, and only when the huntsmen of his place are ready for work, when they signal to each other through blowing the horns. The schoolboy also loves to get up only when the skylark sings with him. Skylark is a bird which seems to be singing while at flight. All these different types of music which the boy hears in the morning makes him happy, and he wants to enjoy them on a bright summer morning and wants to grow in such a sweet company. But going to school in a bright summer morning makes the boy very sad. It takes all his joy away. It doesn't like his school because throughout the day he needs to sit under the vigilance of a strict authoritarian teacher, and he gets scared under her cruel and observant eyes. The poet says that it is not only this boy but all the children feel sad and frightened when they are constantly observed by the strict authoritarian teacher. They sit in the school the whole day in fear and sorrow, sighing or crying in regret all the time. At times, the schoolboy sits discouraged, bending his shoulders and hiding himself from the eyes of the teacher. He sits in this position several hours of the day, listening to the tough lessons. The schoolboy cannot be happy with the teaching of the books because he spent his time in great anxiety. The poet metaphorically refers to the school as a learning bower, indicating that it's supposed to be a pleasant place for the children. The schoolboy is tired sitting the whole day without any freedom, and also in fear and dismay. Hence, he cannot participate in the loads of activities of learning syllabus. The poet refers to the activities of the school as dreary shower, which is again referred to the tiresome activities conducted in the school. Well, I will stop my session here. In the next session, we will discuss the remaining 3 stanzas. But before I end my session, I have a few important questions for you. You can take down the questions. Question number 1. Who is the speaker of the poem, The Schoolboy? Question number 2. What drives the boy's joy away? Question number 3. When does the boy love to rise? Question number 4. Whose company does the boy love? Question number 5. Why does the child not take delight in the book? Question number 6. Who do you think the cruel eye is in the poem? Why does the speaker of the poem call them cruel? Write answers to all these questions and send it back to us through WhatsApp. I'll see you in my next session. Thank you.